Good evening and welcome once again to the Marty Heiser Show. Now I know tonight is an NBA playoff game. And let me just be honest with you. I said in this studio some like 6 months ago that Mitt Romney would be the Republican candidate for president. And I was right. Now, what is today? Today's May 3rd. I'm going to tell you, LeBron James and the Miami Heat are going to win the NBA championship. This little series they're having with our beloved New York Knicks, it's a minor road bump on the way to the NBA championship. But that being said, we're an all-inclusive television program here, so I'm going to give you an up-to-the-minute update. As of right now, the Knicks went into halftime up by 3, but it was an illusion. And LeBron James and the boys from Miami are now up 48-45. So just stay right here because we're going to have an interesting show tonight, and we'll give you the updates. But I'm predicting the Knicks will go down, most likely in 4. They haven't won a playoff game since, Teddy Roosevelt was president. All right, thanks again for joining us on the Marty Heiser Show. You know, sometimes Republicans are accused of always harping on taxes, always harping on overregulation. Well, through the joys of YouTube videos, we have a living example where we have this pencil-neck little politician or bureaucrat, political bureaucrat in the EPA, and he's talking to his buddies in the Enforcement Bureau about going out and trying to regulate some hardworking oil and gas executives out in the western states. And the analogy that he puts forth, it was secretly recorded. He says, you know, we really need to look at this like the Romans used to. The Romans would go into some city in a far-off land like in Turkey, and they would go in, and this is what the guy says. I'm about to roll the tape. You can't, tapes don't lie. Goes into this town in far-off Turkey and says, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to crucify 5 people. And then everyone's kind of getting that. You don't believe me. You think I'm lying. You think I'm just a paranoid guy. Hold on, watch this. I got a droid. I'm going to hit play and listen to this guy. Notice a little smirk there.
About my philosophy of enforcement, and I think it was probably a little crude and maybe not appropriate for the meeting.
He's so proud of himself. His first job out of college.
Little villages, Mediterranean. They go to a little Turkish town somewhere, they find the first 5 guys they saw, and they crucify them.
Crucify him.
That town was really easy to manage for the next few years. And so we make examples out of people who are, in this case, not complying with the law. Find people who are not complying with the law, make them as hard as you can, and make examples out of them. There's a deterrent effect. And companies that are smart see that. They don't want to play that. And they decide at that point that it's time to clean up. And that won't happen.
I know the audio's not that good. Just look at this guy. Your EPA, this is your federal government at work. Crucify the first 5 guys. We're almost done. I just want you to get the self-righteous snickers at the end with him and his fellow bureaucrats sent out from Washington to regulate the oil and gas industries. Okay, that's enough. I can't even. So there you have it. That's one of the newly graduated college graduates going out in the EPA saying the first thing we're going to do is crucify the first 5 people we come across. That's the way the Romans did it, and it kind of worked out just fine. I'm telling you, this over-intrusive federal government, you see it everywhere. They're regulating everything. I know in my painting industry, they're going out and they're saying that you have to put a tarp around a house that you're going to power wash and collect all the water after a power wash. I mean, what are they talking about? So anyways, this is what we're talking about from the federal government coming in and having business-killing regulations, coming at it with a reckless abandon. And I think there's a long tradition in the United States with concern. You know when you see that flag, that little flag with the snake on it, and it says, "Don't tread on me." That's what we're talking about. We're talking about this little skinny-necked guy, this bureaucrat from the EPA, going out there with his little buddies at his little podium going, "Yeah, we're going to do, we'll crucify the first 5 people." That's what the Romans used to do. And then they'll see it and they'll hop too. Well, guess what? We're still Americans, and we still have the freedom of association. We have a freedom of our vote. And if you, like me, are a little bit concerned about what we're seeing with the federal government, killing business, blocking Keystone, bringing in all kinds of regulation, taking tax dollars to pursue green energy programs that really don't seem to be working out so well, and having guys like this. Do I need to roll the tape from Acorn to see what the community organizers are up to? I mean, this is getting not good. And luckily in this government, it's a democracy, it has a self-cleansing component, and we'll all have a chance this coming November to make our voices heard. If you had enough, if there's still a shred of an ounce of wanting to have freedom, I would say that you have an option coming up this November. That's my rant. I had to get it off my chest. When I saw that video, it just made my blood boil. But now I want to take it down a notch, because we have some really incredible guests here tonight. And first, I want to invite Kai Westby to the studio. Thank you for letting me rant there a little bit.
My pleasure, Marty.
I mean, my counselor, I have a psychiatrist, he says it brings my blood pressure down if I just allow myself to get it off my chest.
Did a nice job.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you joining us. Kai Westby, you are running for the United States Senate. You are well educated. You passed the bar exam. You're a practicing attorney. You're a former Marine Corps veteran. What in the world is possessing you to throw your hat in the ring and pursue the United States Senate seat?
Well, 2 reasons, Marty. I believe our country is going down the wrong path, number 1, and things need to be changed very quickly. And number 2, I was not satisfied with the quality of candidates who had already declared. I came to the conclusion I could do a better job. So I'm running.
Well, now, we're talking about this a little bit. Are you enjoying the process? I mean, you got to go out there to a lot of pork roasts and a lot of breakfasts and a lot of RTCs, and you face a lot of rejection out there.
Well, campaigning is an arduous task. There's no question about it. I'm putting in 16, 18-hour days, but I'm energized by meeting people who like my message and want real effective change in Washington, and that's where the payback comes. I'm getting to meet people that want to see new faces in Washington.
Apologize for that. I forgot to put it on. It could be my wife. Caller, do you have a question for the candidate?
Yes, I do. I was wondering if, since Connecticut is such a blue state, how do you plan to beat Chris Murphy?
Excellent question. And by the way, you have up there, you have where you can reach the senator or the Senate candidate, but we'll also put up the number to call in the studio and if you have any questions for the candidate. What about that? We are the bluest of the blue states. How in the world are you going to beat a Democrat?
As I go around the state talking to people, I've discovered that people are sick and tired of the national debt, taxes being too high, government out of control, insane borrowing, the Cylindra scandal, Fast and Furious. People have had it. They have had it right up to their neck, and they're looking for change. And even though Connecticut is a blue state, I find that people have had it with the liberal dogma and would really like to see an authentic conservative in the United States Senate.
Excellent. Well, we're joined by Dave Straight. Now, Dave is a bit of a political savant. He's very involved, very passionate about issues. He's made a lot of money, and I'm not even sure what he does, but he's done very well for himself. And he has a couple questions for you as well.
Well, if he's a savant, he should be highly paid.
Yeah, absolutely. He's really smart about, pork bellies and wheat or something like that.
So, Marty, I think we always have to start these discussions, particularly in Connecticut,
Yes.
with the history of politicians in Connecticut, particularly as it relates to Senate candidates. What I need to hear from Kai today is, have you ever served in Vietnam?
No, I have not served in Vietnam, even though I am a former Marine.
Okay, so for the record, you have not served. Okay, so we've cleared the air on that. Well, once again, I just want to remind everybody just how important the election cycle is. When I look back, roll the videotape back a few years, You know, it wasn't long ago we had two people named Al Gore and John Edwards that came within a handful of votes of controlling the White House. And I think to myself, look at those people today and how close they came to being in power. John Edwards, massive scandal in the news, probably ends up in jail at some point for, you know, taking him over $1 million of campaign funds. And then you look at Al Gore, the groper. I mean, these people, you know, came very, very close to running the country. So anytime a candidate comes on this show or any show, I think we really have to drill down to the facts and make sure that we know their views and get a sense of their character. One of the things that is in the news a lot right now is an energy policy. I mean, we've seen under the Obama administration, we've watched oil prices double. Mm-hmm. We've watched him, you know, consistently limit drilling on federal lands. Even though he wants to try and take credit for the increase in production, that's all come on private lands. You know, we saw him block the Keystone Pipeline. He has never, ever initiated an energy policy. Last week, 2 weeks ago, he came out and the EPA regulated CO2 emissions as a way to shut down coal plants. Once again, another negative for the America's energy policy. What is your energy policy? What can we do to limit our dependence on foreign oil?
David, I would recommend an all of the above energy policy, specifically approve the Keystone Pipeline. That's going to create thousands upon thousands of good-paying private sector jobs. That's going to drive our economy.
Now, is that a shovel-ready project?
It is a project that will create a lot of good-paying jobs. But the Keystone Pipeline, number one. Number two, open up the federal lands for drilling, and also allow coal companies to do business and pursue nuclear power as well as wind and solar. But I think all of those energy sources need to be adopted, and we really need to make a concerted effort to make our country energy independent. As we export wealth to the Middle East, we are hurting our economy. We're creating balance of payments problems, piling on debt. Energy independence will bring our economy back. It will create jobs in Connecticut. It will reduce our national deficit. That's the way to go. And we have plenty of energy sources. Energy independence is a goal that we can achieve.
So should we let the free markets work, or should we continue to subsidize solar and wind power and all these alternative energies that cost 3 and 4 times as much as, say, natural gas today?
The market is the way to determine what sources of energy the people should receive. The market tells us who the winners and who the losers should be, not government bureaucrats.
Now you had I was watching one of your speeches. You called it the Paul Revere moment. I think it was an assembly in support of the Second Amendment and some concerns about the Constitution.
Yes.
Sometimes, I mean, a little bit like we were having some fun with the YouTube video there. But do you think sometimes we're like a little bit too paranoid about some of that? But before you do, we always go to the callers first. Caller, do you have a question for the candidate?
I certainly do.
Go right ahead.
Okay, I'd like to know if the Federal Reserve is part of the federal government.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the question. What about that? Is the Federal Reserve part of the federal government? Could be a trick question. I'm just
it's a quasi-federal agency. In other words, the Fed chairman is selected by the president, and Congress oversees the Federal Reserve in some sense. What I would like to see, and I'm not on the same page with Ron Paul on all the issues, but with respect to the Federal Reserve needs to be audited on a recurring basis.
Okay. And it hasn't been audited as of now, not independently
Well,
audited?
I think they're pretty much running amok as far as doing what they want to do.
Okay. So back to the question about the Paul Revere moment. I mean, it seems as if you have sort of almost a crusading aspect, that the sense is that we're somehow losing control of our government, that the Constitution is being trampled on. I mean, I can see that in a couple ways. Well, actually, 2 Supreme Court cases right now. You're an attorney. Obamacare, and then the other one with the Arizona immigration law.
These are the amendments that I feel are under assault. The First Amendment by Catherine Sebelius of Health and Human Services.
Yeah.
The First Amendment is under attack. Eric Holder is putting the Second Amendment under attack. His Fast and Furious scheme is an example of him trying to undermine the Second Amendment. Obama signing the NDAA is a direct assault on the Fourth and Fifth Amendment, and Obamacare itself is an assault on the 10th Amendment.
So, I mean, the Constitution, which we're all, I mean, when my son's in the military, when he takes the oath, he swears to defend and protect the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Yep.
Is this just a lot of hyperbole, or do you really fear for the future of the country as our constitutional rights are gradually being withered away?
I feel that our constitutional rights are being eroded and impaired, and this particular administration has an almost disdain for the United States Constitution. What we need to do is elect people who understand that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and it's our blueprint for limited government.
Caller, do you have a question for Kai Westby, United States candidate for the U.S. Senate?
Yes, I do. Two quick questions I'd like to get answered real fast. One, unlike a congressional race, the U.S. Senate race takes a lot more effort and organizational skills to get out there and get enough delegates at the convention to get on the ballot. I know on the Democratic side, you need to get at least 15% of the delegates in order to be on a primary ballot. Now, we know that Linda McMahon and Chris Shays will probably be on the ballot come August. But my first question for the candidate for Senate here is, what are you doing in terms of getting enough delegates to get on the ballot? And if you don't get on the ballot through the convention, are you prepared to get enough signatures to petition yourself on the ballot? Number two, a health of a campaign is based upon your fundraising efforts. And I'd like to know, how is your fundraising efforts for this first quarter? How much cash you have on hand? Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you. Those are kind of, I happen to know the caller, but those are sort of nuts and bolts questions about, running a campaign,
Yes.
the guts of it. How's it going? So, delegate count and then fundraising.
I believe I'll have enough delegates at the convention to be eligible for the primary. If that doesn't work out that way, I'm prepared to get the signatures. And I'm running what I would call a campaign very different than the $50 million variety. I am going to show people that I can run an effective campaign with pennies on the dollar. I have a lot of volunteers who are donating their time, and I'm going to show people that we don't need to spend gobs of money, obscene amounts of money, to run an effective campaign. It can be done with sweat equity, with an army of volunteers who believe in the quality of the candidate.
So you said if you don't prevail at the convention, you will petition and you will primary? Is that hard and fast, or is that what you're planning on doing?
That's what I'm planning on doing.
Okay.
But plan A, obviously, is to get enough delegates at the convention to be able to be in the primary.
Okay. What about that, though? I want to get back to your Paul Revere moment, because
Yes.
I thought it was poignant.
Yes.
Talk about that a little bit, and where you think we're going.
I use the metaphor of the Paul Revere moment to tell people to really pay attention to what's going on. We have an administration that is attempting to shred the Constitution, and if we're not careful, we are going to have a type of government that is fundamentally different than the type of government envisioned by the founders.
Okay. Caller, you have a question for the candidate?
Yeah, Marty, I'm calling back again about the Federal Reserve.
Yes. I think that the candidate has. He said that it's a quasi-government institution. There is some government oversight because the party in power gets to assign the head of the Fed. That's what you were saying.
Yes.
And that's an elected
That's where
body.
it begins and ends.
Right. But go ahead, give us a wrap-up on the Federal Reserve.
Yeah, well, Marty, he still hasn't answered the question.
Is it part of the federal government or not?
I think the answer he's looking for is that it's a cartel, that it is not a federal government, a part of the federal government, and he's right.
Okay.
So anyway, I want to jump to foreign policy because it's...
All right, call back.
So, but I started earlier and I said establishing credibility is really important for us. And I want to make sure that if there are any skeletons in your closet, we kind of determine that in advance. So this 2 days ago, the president came out and said, okay, in that book, Dreams of My Father, that girl that I wrote, my girlfriend that I wrote about in New York City, and he goes into great intimate detail about the play he went to and what the play was about and how he stood on the steps after the play and she cried. And he's very descriptive about describing this girl. Well, all of a sudden, now that was several years ago he wrote the book, all of a sudden 2 days ago he comes out and says, oh, that girl didn't really exist. That was just a composite of my girlfriends. I've never heard that expression before, and I don't know how you sell that. But just for the record, are there any girlfriends in your past that didn't really exist? Or is your past, do we know everything in your past that you've talked about, is it real?
Most of the girlfriends I had were real people.
That makes a lot more fun that way, doesn't it?
Yeah, they were.
Okay, so you passed that one again. So let's move on to foreign policy for a second. Foreign policy, for whatever, I think it's partly because we have an all-volunteer army and because we're patriotic as Americans and we all want to support the troops, that we're not paying much attention to what's going on. This past week, the Obama administration I got to be careful on this because Mike, our esteemed producer, is going to be very upset if I don't get this correctly. The Obama administration committed some type of support, whether it's special forces or whatever it is to be determined, for 12 more years to Afghanistan. That is the graveyard of empires. What would you do with Afghanistan? How do we ever get out of that quagmire?
We have to take the troops out of Afghanistan in a way that's consistent with protecting their safety. Dave, I don't see any real value in being in Afghanistan. As you mentioned, it's been the graveyard of every foreign nation that's tried to invade Afghanistan, and it's really of very marginal strategic importance. So, and furthermore, I think we've really worn out our welcome there. So I'm in favor of getting the troops out, leaving Afghanistan in a way that's consistent with protecting those people who are still there.
And if it then falls and implodes, then what?
If it implodes, it implodes. Like I said before, its strategic value is not, in my opinion, that great, and it's always going to be an unstable country. So the question is, where can we best allocate our scarce resources, and I don't think Afghanistan is that place.
Caller, you have a question for Kai Westby, United States Senate candidate. Go right ahead.
Yes. Well, a few minutes ago he mentioned about government expenses. So I would like to know, where was he when we spent $1 trillion going to two useless wars? I never heard of him before.
Okay, that's a good question. You said, and this is another sort of rap against Republicans, you might say, oh, fiscally conservative, save money, yet it would appear that we were more than willing to spend money on what he calls two useless wars. That's the caller. I don't agree with that, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, whether they were two useless wars or not, that's open to debate, but the fact of the matter is that Republicans are just as guilty as Democrats in terms of running up the debt and the deficit. So Republicans have to take responsibility for their fiscal mismanagement as well.
Mm-hmm. Caller, do you have a question for candidate Kai Westby, U.S. Senate candidate? Go right ahead.
Hello. Yes, well, I wanted to ask Mr. Westby, actually, if he, some of the other candidates actually said they don't support middle-class tax cuts, like Chris Jay's, and I wanted to ask Kai Westby what he supports with regards to tax relief for the way overtaxed middle class. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I was in our research on you. You mentioned Tax Freedom Day in Connecticut is May 5th, as compared with, just as a sample, Tennessee, it's March 28th. But what about that? There are other candidates running for Senate. Middle tax cuts. Are you in favor?
I start with the basic premise, Marty, that taxes are too high. Taxes are too high for all people. Gas tax, income tax, property tax. The whole range of taxes is such an incredible burden on people. What I would like to see is taxes reduced. I'd like to see a single rate system, and I'd really like to see our business taxes be brought way down so that we have comparable advantage to other foreign countries where the foreign taxes are much lower than the United States. We need to bring down those business taxes so companies are encouraged to come to our country to set up shop. That's the way we're going to get out of this recession.
Are you a little concerned about the United States having now the highest corporate tax rate in the Western world? I mean, to me, it seems unbelievable that the United States, where capitalism has flourished for so long, now has the highest, I think it was 39% corporate tax rate.
High business taxes are the principal reason why this country is not getting out of the recession. We are not competitive with other countries from the global perspective. We need to bring those business taxes down so that companies are encouraged to set up shop in the United States and create the jobs that are going to get us out of the recession.
Okay, last caller. Caller, you have a question for Kai Westby, Senate candidate. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I called previously in regards to a couple of insight questions in regards to your getting on the ballot based upon going to the convention versus petitions. And my second part of my question, which I don't think was quite answered, was, again, I'll repeat this again.
How much money do you have, right?
Yeah. And I say this because you're dealing with a race where just 2 years ago, you had a candidate in Linda McMahon who spent $50 million on trying to get the seat. And of course, TV costs a lot of money, mail costs a lot of money. And based upon your federal, your latest report here.
Actually, caller, you may have a chance to ask the gentlelady that question herself. But we got it. We're gonna wrap up. All right, hold call back. Okay, in 10 seconds or less. You got any money? Hold on, let me see. Okay, you got any money?
Yeah, I have a few bucks.
Okay.
We have enough.
Can you print some?
I'd like to.
Okay.
I'm going to have enough money to run an effective campaign to get my message out, and when people find out what my message is and what kind of a guy I am, they're going to vote for me.
What's your website if people want to get in touch with you?
KaiWestby2012.com.
Okay, thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate it. Thank you for your service in the Marine Corps.
Yes.
And appreciate you running for this. Really
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Okay, and now we're not going to go to a break or anything. We're going to have there we go, right here. I'm right here. And if you just stay with us right away, we have a real treat. Both my guests right now, Kai Westby, and my next guest, Linda McMahon, are both running for the United States Senate. And we're just delighted to now have Linda McMahon join us here on the set of the Marty Heiser Show, where you always get the truth, or sort of our warped perspective on the truth, although my producer, such as it is, would want me to say you always get the truth. But we're delighted to be joined by Linda McMahon, and I have a few questions for her, and I really appreciate her making the trip up here. Linda McMahon.
How are you, Marty? Good to see you.
Very good, very good. Very good to see you, too.
Good to see you both.
And Dave, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Here. Is this for me?
That is absolutely for you. And it's a little gin and tonic, actually. It's kind of the summer, and so we want that.
Tastes just like water to me.
Okay, it's just nice water. Well, listen, I'm just happy that you're joining us. I appreciate you making the time. I've actually done some research on you and seen all the events. No, it's all good. It's all good. But you were at different businesses. You were at the Auto Collision Club. You were at a company called Chrome Corp. I think you're out there at diners at RTC. I went through 220 pictures of you. And it's pretty impressive what you're going through. And if I can just start off by asking, you seem to be a very wealthy lady, but we're going to talk a little bit about New Bern, North Carolina. You seem to have a well-established family. You have 5 grandkids. What?
6 grandkids.
6?
Yes.
God bless. What in the world is possessing you to throw your hat in the ring and pursue political office?
Well, honestly, those 6 old grandchildren, at the time I first got into the race in 2009, I had 4 grandchildren.
Okay.
And I looked at those little children and I thought, what kind of legacy, am I leaving, for them? Mm-hmm. It's not fair to them to inherit a country that is, worse off than what their grandfather and I, inherited or what their parents were inheriting. And it's going to be that first generation that will be worse off if we don't make a difference. And I left a job that I loved. I resigned as the CEO of WWE for no other reason than for public service and to hopefully serve the people of Connecticut in the United States Senate.
Wow, because you ran last time. I thought you ran a great campaign. I remember the debate that you had with I forget the guy's name. It starts with a B. I think he's our senator now.
The one that was in Vietnam.
Not really.
Oh, I guess he
was doing some Toys for Tots campaign outside of Washington D.C. at the time. Although when he was he repeatedly claimed he was in Vietnam. When we came back from Vietnam was the same.
Now, do we have to have Linda make the pledge, whether she was or wasn't in Vietnam, or can we skip over that?
I think we could skip over that. But I've just appreciated your campaign, and now going after it another time, it's incredible stick-to-itiveness. And I think sometimes people have the wrong impression of you a little bit. They think, wow, here's someone who has a lot of, she's been very successful, she's able to spend money on this campaign. How can she relate to me? Now, I heard you tell once, and I wish you'd reiterate this story, it has to do with a pregnant woman, a car that didn't start or had a flat, a tow truck that took you to a court where you were going for some kind of court case. Can you flesh out that story just a little bit?
Well, I can, but let me just back up a little before that, if I may.
Sure.
You referenced a little bit earlier about New Bern, North Carolina.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I Googled it. And I had the map here. What street did you live on? Can you point it out here?
Well, I actually lived a little outside of town on one of the routes heading down to Cherry Point, North Carolina.
Okay,
right.
You live so outside of town, you had to drive towards town to go hunting. But anyways, go ahead.
And I'm an only child. And my parents both were civil service employees at Cherry Point, North Carolina.
Right.
My dad was
the Marine Corps base there?
That's right.
Okay.
My dad was a shop foreman and my mom was a budget analyst. And when I was born, we lived in low-income housing outside of the base. My parents worked, they saved their money, and as my dad liked to say, he bought a little piece of land up the road and built the house I grew up in.
So you were not to the manor born?
Not to the manor born.
There wasn't a silver spoon anywhere in your house, let alone, you growing up with a silver spoon?
No, definitely not. And what I learned from my parents was hard work. When they built that house and we moved into it, there was no mortgage. They didn't know anything on it because they didn't build more than they could have afforded. It was a work ethic. They didn't spend more than they made, and they saved a little bit for a rainy day. And that's the kind of work ethic that I grew up with in New Bern, North Carolina. So that's really my background.
Yeah. I mean, you have a lovely house now in Greenwich. You made your money in the kind of living the American dream, if you will. I understand you met your husband. Now he was 16 and you were 13,
That's
and you
right.
met at church.
We met in church,
Okay.
and I was singing in the church choir. Now,
Okay.
You want to sing for us a little bit?
No, because I'm about to say that if you ever heard me sing, you'd know how desperate they were to have people in the choir.
Gave that up for politics, huh?
So he came in the back of the church, and I thought, wow, here's this cute guy. And I said, I don't know him. He must not be from town or whatever. So I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to the church service that day. I was 13, Vince was 16. After church, we chatted for a little bit. We stayed in touch. He was not from my hometown. And eventually we were able to start dating when I was old enough.
Right.
We were married early.
Okay.
I was right out of high school. Vince was a junior in college. I caught up with him and we got married. And then the day before we graduated from college, I found out I was pregnant with our first child. So there we were, no job, no money, no health insurance, but a baby on the way. And so when I talk to people around our state, and I say, I get where you're coming from. I can understand that. I understand your fears and your concerns. I do. I've been there.
Yeah.
And then our second child was born about 7 years later. Time had passed, and we had, done some things and gotten into business a bit. Then not the business we're in, for WWE.
Right.
But one that was not a good investment for us, and eventually we had to declare bankruptcy after trying for about a couple of years to pay off some loans that we'd signed for. So the story that you had alluded to earlier.
Yeah.
I'm now 7 months pregnant with our daughter.
Okay.
And we're going actually to bankruptcy court in Hartford, Connecticut.
Right.
Vince is out of town.
Never a happy day.
No, it was not a happy day.
Right.
And there were no cell phones then. And so I went down to get in the car, and I had a flat tire.
7 months pregnant.
7 months pregnant.
Flat tire.
Yes.
On the way to court to declare bankruptcy.
So I called a towing service out of Hartford.
Do we have like violin music? Could we just get that? This is a backdrop.
Let me
Keep
just
going. That's
just
good.
on my own little pity party here.
This is almost like a country song. By the way, we have to give an update. The Heat 77, the Knicks 62. I told you, it's over. LeBron James will not be satisfied. 5 minutes left. Turn it off. Turn back to the Marty Heiser Show. We have Linda McMahon. This is real drama. That is over. You can put a fork in them. All right, sorry. Go
So
ahead.
at any rate, I call a towing service out of Hartford. They send the tow truck. By the time the truck gets there, we don't have enough time to change the tire in order to be back at court on time.
Right.
So I asked the driver, would he give me a ride back into Hartford? So I climb up into this tow truck, and we pull up in front of the courthouse. And there's Vince standing on the steps looking like, is that Linda? And he walks over, and I climb down. I've got file folders under my arm. I'm 7 months pregnant. He says, well, I guess now all you need to be is barefoot. So, you know, we had
that to me sounds like a country music song. I went to the bankruptcy court when I was pregnant. But caller, do you have a question for Linda McMahon? Yes, the famous Linda McMahon right here in our studio. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I certainly do, Marty. I'm not exactly sure what she spent on her last campaign. I believe it was somewhere around $40 million. But what my question is, why would you want to spend $40 million to get a job that pays you $200,000 or whatever a senator gets paid? Why would you spend that much money? I mean, this doesn't make sense.
All right, well, let's ask her. She's right here. But it's a good question. Can't you make a lot more money doing your business than being a United States Senator? Isn't this an incredible pay cut for you?
Well, it's even more bizarre than that, a more incredible pay cut than that, because I've agreed that my salary would go to charity. I won't take a salary as a United States Senator. I will contribute my salary to charity.
Wow.
Nor would I take the pension program or the medical plan. Now, not everyone can do that. I can do that, and that's another measure, you know, of way that I'll give back. I can't imagine. I invested in the campaign because I have that kind of a commitment to serve the people of Connecticut.
Okay. Caller, are you wanting to be the recipient of the charity of the $200,000 Senate salary from Linda McMahon, or do you have a question?
Yes, my name's Ryan. I'm calling to ask Ms. McMahon how she will help the middle class.
How you'll help the middle class. Thank you. What about that? Will there be a chicken in every pot if you're elected? Will taxes come down, salaries go up, and it'll be sunny every day? We have brochures. We need a close-up of this.
This is a plan that I've worked on for about the past 5 months. And this is my plan to jumpstart the economy and to get people back to work. And it starts with the keystone of it being a tax cut for the middle class.
Okay.
Now, because we pay ungraduated tax, it's a tax benefit for everyone. But the primary benefit will be for the middle class. For an average family of 4 in Connecticut earning $125,000, they would save $6,000 next year if this plan were in place. And so that will be and that's an incredible boost, you know, to our families here in Connecticut. And of course it would be around the country, you know, as well. But this plan then deals also with reducing corporate taxes from 35 to 25%, getting rid of loopholes and subsidies. Third, it's a 6-point plan. The third point is that it gets rid of overburdensome regulations. 4, we cut spending. 1% of every dollar. For this year, we're on pace to spend $3.8 trillion. 1% would be $38 billion. We can find that easily in our government with duplication and fat that we have in different programs. The fourth thing is to make sure we're training our workforce for the jobs that are available. When I've toured companies in this state, a lot of precision manufacturing companies, they can't find skilled workforce to come in.
Hold on one second. Yeah.
And then the last part is to produce energy faster but responsibly, exploring for our oil and natural gas and other resources so we can be energy independent without sacrificing our environment. So that's a 6-point plan.
Keystone Pipeline, you'd green light that if you were
Yes,
senator?
I would.
All right. Caller, do you have a question for Linda McMahon, candidate for the United States Senate?
Yeah, well, it's just pretty hard and pretty difficult to understand that being a businesswoman, she's willing to spend $40 million to make it zero, because she's not going to get the salary of a senator. So I just wanted to point out here, comment, and people is looking at her, people is listening. Maybe they don't have the opportunity to talk to her, but there gotta be something else why she want to become a politician.
Let me jump in.
So do you think like maybe there's some conspiracy afoot that she has some hidden agenda? Is that what you think?
Absolutely, $40 million versus zero.
Okay, so that's
any
kind of,
sense at all?
that's a
$40 million
ridiculous
to make
accusation,
zero?
though.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the call.
I mean, think about that. To get elected to the White House, the president spent over $1 billion in the last election cycle. The fact is that getting elected costs a lot of money. Why is it that in America we've somehow or other allowed the current administration in particular to demonize wealth and success? I don't get that. When I look at the Obama administration right now in the last 3 years, the size of the federal government has just exploded. The public employees are now making twice as much as private sector employees. That has to change. I think your Kodak moment was in the debate with Blumenthal when you asked him exactly how is a job created. You did a marvelous job. We played that clip on the show. I thought that was perfect. That's the message I think we need to get across. I don't care how much she spends to get elected. I don't know why that would bother anyone. The next person's going to call in and say, well, he's going to spend $10 million. How much is too much? How much is too little? It's an absurd argument.
I have a thought. The candidate's right here. She's not a potted plant. What do you think?
Well, the thing of it is, it's money. It's money that I earned, and it's not taxpayer money. It's money that I earned, and I'm willing to make that investment because I have absolutely no other motivation than the public service and serving the people of Connecticut. I want to get our people back to work. I want to make sure that our economy gets back on track, and it will grow if we cut taxes and spending. You can't do one without the other. You must cut spending, and we've got, we don't have a revenue problem in Washington, but we do have a spending problem, and that's what we must address. We have to get rid of overregulation and red tape. It's killing us. Do you know we spend $1.75 trillion every year in this country, businesses do, just to comply with regulation? That doesn't help them with their bottom line. It's not helping them produce anything. They hire people to make sure that they are regulatory compliant.
Yeah, and it's becoming where, let alone Connecticut. I've always known Connecticut, although I don't know, you seem to have run a business in Connecticut very successfully, but it's considered a very business unfriendly state. But now we have the unfortunate situation where America is becoming a business unfriendly place to operate a business. 39% corporate taxes. Apple Computer has made I don't know how many billions of dollars, and it's sitting over in banks in India and China because they can't repatriate that money because it'll get taxed away.
That's why part of this plan is reducing corporate taxes from 35 to 25%. But at the same time, it does away with that territorial taxation penalty.
People like to jump on that and say, well, of course she wants to cut corporate taxes because she'd make more money. But I think what people fail to make the connection that if your corporate tax rate becomes competitive at 10% with Southeast Asian countries where all the jobs are going, you could hire a lot more people here. Is that fair?
Well, absolutely it is. And there are a lot of businesses, that cannot compete right now, with, because of the tax rates. And we're driving businesses out of our country because of that. But again, with the money that can't be repatriated, or surely at a very large penalty if it's brought back here, and that's not right. No other country does that.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not. We have no level playing field for our businesses to compete.
And not only is it becoming business unfriendly, but you demonize anyone that's gone out and made some money in their life as if they're the problem. When 1% is paying 30% of the taxes, top 10% is paying over 60% of the taxes, and yet we're the bad guys. Abraham Lincoln said, "You cannot lift up the wage earner by tearing down the wage payer." Caller, do you have a question?
Yes, Jesus is the Lord. How you doing? Yes.
We can all agree on that. Amen to that, brother. But go ahead for Linda McMahon.
Okay, since 1912 and 1913, the creation of the Federal Reserve and the income tax, every president, Republican or Democrat, and the majority of the mainstream congressmen from both parties have advanced the policies of the Federal Reserve banking cartel. Major General Smedley Butler, who was the most highly decorated.
Smedley Butler. I was just talking about Smedley this morning. What's up with Smedley?
Well, he was the most highly decorated war veteran up to that time in World War I, and he wrote a book, War is a Racket, and that all the wars, including World War I, and prior to that,
all right, we gotta land this plane. We gotta land the plane. Give us a question.
The question is, he said that they've advanced all the, the wars have been to advance the policies of the bankers and to enrich the corporations. Why should we think that this candidate here, McMahon, is any different than any other candidate, Republican or Democrat?
You know why we won't think that? Well, I'll ask her right now. Thanks a lot. Give my best to Smedley. Okay. What about that? All kidding aside, there's this conspiracy that, all these wars are fought because of these greedy bankers, and there's all this, Federal Reserve. Let's break it down. What are your views on our entanglements now in Afghanistan and Iraq and potentially in Iran in the future? What would your foreign policy be regarding those things?
Well, first of all, before we put boots on the ground anywhere, I believe that the security and the interest of the United States has to be at risk. Mm-hmm. If it's at risk and we go in, then we need to have a plan. We need to have a plan on how we're going to win and then how we're going to get out.
Getting out seems to be the hard part.
But you can't go in without having that plan.
Okay.
And the security and the interest of the United States must first of all be at risk before we would commit boots on the ground. Mm-hmm. And that would be first and foremost, what I would be looking for to have that explanation before we'd vote, to engage in war. I think in Afghanistan we need to be following the plan that we have now to bring our troops home. Look, I don't agree with the policy that if you go into a country, you announce that you're going to withdraw by a certain date.
Right.
However, that date is now in place, and I believe that we should continue with that systematic withdrawal from Afghanistan, but make sure that we're not compromising those people who are there, our people who are there.
It seems to be a common question, so I'm just going to lay it on the line. Are you a tool of any sinister international plot to take over the government?
Definitely not.
Are you somehow a puppet of international bankers that are somehow wanting to manipulate our democracy?
Absolutely not.
Seems to me you were born and raised in New Bern, North Carolina. You fell in love with this guy that got into the entertainment business. You built a wonderful empire. I'm a Hulkamaniac myself. And you made a lot of money, but you don't like the direction of the country, and you're putting your money where your mouth is, and you're running for Senate. Is that pretty much it?
Pretty much sums it up.
Am I being duped by you in any way at this point by buying into all this?
Definitely not, because that's exactly where I'm coming from. And it is my goal to make sure that we get our folks back to work and get our economy turned around.
Now caller, do you have
go ahead. If I may, you were asking me about my foreign policy?
Yeah.
If we don't have a strong economy,
well, I don't have a question.
Hold on.
We can't negotiate from a strength position,
mm-hmm.
To get anything done. I mean, when others are holding your debt, then you have to negotiate with them.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're in a weakened position. So having a strong economy is one of the greatest assets you can have in having a strong foreign policy.
That's why nobody comes to America to talk to the president anymore. They go over to China, right? Because China's the one that's running the budget surpluses, and that's where the money is.
You don't swim towards a sinking ship.
No, and
unfortunately,
I would say
that's
this
what
regarding Linda. The good thing about American-made politicians, I mean, we know her history from the time she was 13 years old. She's lived under a magnifying glass. I would be surprised if there were a lot of surprises that came out on you. So I find comfort in that.
I can't think of any.
I Googled you. There isn't too much. Caller, what are we missing here? Please fill us in with a question or comment for Linda McMahon, candidate for U.S. Senate.
Well, what I would like to say, Marty, first of all, I think in the very beginning you were talking about Justin Bernier. But I would like to say I wish Linda the best of luck with this new campaign. I had the privilege of working on her campaign the last time, meeting her son-in-law and her daughter, which are wonderful people. I believe in what Linda's doing. I believe she is sincere, and when she wants to work for no salary, no benefits, it's because her heart, and I noticed from the past campaign, her heart is with this country and the love for it and the love that she knows her grandchildren and children will have a better life than what we're looking at right now. All I can say is, Linda, God bless you. It was a pleasure working on your campaign the last time, and if I have the privilege, I will do it again. Take care, all.
Thank you very
Thanks for
much.
the call.
Thank you.
Did you put him up to that? Is that
don't-
like your uncle or something?
I don't even know who it was.
So you don't know who it is either.
Do that, huh?
That's all part of this conspiracy. Has to do with the
I
Fed.
don't know who that was, but I'm very grateful for his help and his continuing support. And yes, I would definitely like to have you to work on my campaign again. Thank you very much.
Dave, get a question in because the calls are coming in fast
Well,
and
I
furious.
just wanted to bring up that every time
Hold on a
I
second.
go to the Drudge Report, I see the Linda plan on top. When I go to YouTube, I have the Linda plan popping up. You're doing a very good job
Thank
of
you.
focusing.
You mean
Oh,
this plan?
that one. There you go. So you're doing a very good job focusing on what I think is probably the single most important issue facing this country. I read yesterday that there are 8 million people now collecting disability. We have more people in America today on collecting food stamps than we've ever had before. Home ownership is at a record low. We have the biggest problems facing America that we've ever had in our history. And instead of going forward, which is the new campaign slogan of the Obama administration, we're doing nothing but going backwards.
There's also the Bolsheviks campaign.
Exactly.
Do you have a question, though, for the candidate?
Well, so on a national level, what do we do to enable? Well, here in particular, right now, when people graduate, if you're attending college and you're on a visa, or the second you graduate, you have to go home. Shouldn't we try and maintain that talent here? All these engineers that are graduating have to go home right away. Can't we keep those people here?
I think we should. I mean, we are a country, of immigrants, and we should welcome those sharp minds and keep them here for sure. We should have a different kind of visa program. I think we need different types of visa programs than the one we have now. I was talking with a young woman at an event just before I came here tonight, and part of her concern is, she's been in this country for 12 years. She's an MIT graduate, a Harvard graduate, and yet she would have to go home if the company that is sponsoring her, terminated her job. And she's very happy here, but yet she doesn't have, a plan. She can't start her own business. She said, I would really like to be an entrepreneur and start my own business, but I can't do that now. So I think we need to have different kinds of visas. Now, she's paying taxes, she's here legally, all of those things, but we want to keep her here. And we want her to be able to have her own business and to grow and create jobs.
It only makes sense.
And I think we have, clearly on illegal immigration, we want to, we have to reinforce our borders and stop those folks from coming over. We need to do that. If we need to put more boots on the ground, if we, need to beef up the surveillance that we have, we need to secure our borders, because not only are they coming in and can be a negative economic impact sometimes, but also we have terrorists who have come across those borders.
So the border problem largely is greatly impacted by the drug problem, right?
Yes,
So,
especially on the southern border.
Okay, and were you supportive of decriminalizing marijuana in Connecticut?
I was not.
Okay, and on a national level, would you be in favor of it or no?
No.
Okay.
Caller, do you have a question?
Marty, I do. First of all, great show. You've outdone yourself. Linda, great to see you running. Here's a question, Linda, and it's relative to job creation. I moved a company from New Jersey to Connecticut 3 years ago, creating 22 jobs. Got zero help from the state because I was not a person of color and I was not a female. Created 22 jobs. We manufacture vending machines that right now we're the only manufacturer in the United States that sends to China, Asia, India, South America. Linda, we can't even get on to government contracts in the state or on our rest areas when we're in every other rest area of the country, every other state's rest area in the country. And we can't get into ours because McDonald's and other large corporations have basically written contracts to keep us out. Linda, how do we change that, and how do we do it in a way that makes Connecticut more business friendly? Thanks.
Before you answer that real quick, Knicks lost, right? Told you, you cannot stop LeBron James. They're going all the way. Go right ahead.
Well, you are asking a question relative to a state issue. A United States Senator won't be able to impact that much as to what happens in the state. However, I could just say that you really need to continue to work with your state representatives to make sure we can change those laws. I'm not familiar with the kind of restriction, that you are talking about, but that's unfair. We need to encourage all of the business development that we can have in our state and to attract as much business as we can, because people are leaving our state. We've increased taxes. We have, kept a high level of spending. Our deficit has grown, and we're not closing that gap. It's clearly what happens when you raise taxes and you don't cut spending.
Caller, do you have a question for Linda McMahon, Senate candidate from Connecticut? Go right ahead. This is your big moment.
Am I in the air?
You are so on the air. We're all sitting here. We're sitting here waiting. There are literally hundreds of thousands of people waiting for you to ask a real pertinent question. Now go.
Hi, Linda. Good to be on the air with you. I have a question about how you're going to get everything done in Washington. You're just one person, but how are you going to make change in the Senate as a whole?
Well, you have to start one person. You have to start one person at a time, one voice at a time. But you have to keep at it. You have to build consensus. You have to drive projects. Look, I've been a CEO. A CEO has, the power of a pen to get things done. But if you don't motivate, if you don't inspire, if you don't manage, and if you don't lead the people in your company, you are not going to have that company progress as fast. And that's exactly what you have to do in the Senate. I've done it. I have those skills. And I hope to be the next senator from Connecticut.
Caller, last question. Go ahead. Lightning round, real quick. Caller, do you have a question for the candidate?
So,
hello.
So, Marty, in the meantime, the dirty three-letter word is cut. What would you cut? Nobody likes to talk about what they'll cut, but we're spending, one third of what we spend, we either print or borrow. What would you cut?
Well, just look at all of the duplication in programs that we have now in Washington. I mean, we have 47 programs to train people for jobs. 47 duplicative programs. We need to go in and cut those kinds of duplicative programs.
Perfect.
Thank you so much for being on. I want to give you the last 15 seconds just to tell the people where they can get in touch with you, how they can get on board, what your website and everything else. Take it away.
Well, LindaForSenate2012.com. Please go to our website. And you can also look at lindasplan.com to get further information about this program that I think will put people back to work in Connecticut, create jobs, and move our economy forward in our country. Thank you.
Our guest tonight has been Linda McMahon. Join us next week when, frankly, I have no idea what we're going to do. Maybe we'll have Linda back. But thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week, 9 to 10 p.m., and also on all those other cable channels. It's on some other time. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Good night.